All right, we're now going to look at a old firm decision making with fixed costs in one of our spreadsheets. So I've copied here and pasted the actual values, and it's Q mid, it's our quantity plotted against the marginal cost. And I'm going to insert the chart here. Let's look at this thing that looks like a chart, insert chart. I've highlighted that. And I have this graph. And so now what we want to do is annotate this. Let's figure out what's the producer surplus. Okay, so the producer surplus is going to be the amount that you are paid as a person who's selling the product. And let's assume that that's, let's get a thick purple pen here. Let's assume that that's $4. And again, we're assuming competitive markets. So that's the price that's we're able to get. So what's the producer surplus? The marginal cost, this blue line, that's the cost. Literally, if we could think about adding up the cost of the product, first unit costs this much, the second unit costs this much, and we're literally just adding up the costs. So everything below, it's like how much to make the 13th unit, how much to make the 14th, and the height of this is giving you the actual costs. You see the marginal cost of the 0 to 10th units. Our first set there was $2.50 each, right? And we plot that at the midpoint. But to figure out the producer surplus, it's important to know what the cost is and what's the revenue. So what's our revenue? Let's get the purple. This is the price. Firms will choose to continue to produce as long as price covers the cost of the additional unit. And so here, a little bit $4.35, if this price is $4. Total revenue would be the rectangle. That's how we're representing it. So total revenue is, or TR is going to be price times quantity. And then our cost, you want to subtract the cost out of that. And our cost, literally, we're adding up all of these. So we get the numbers. If we could add up these shapes, all these little amounts here. So what's our producer surplus? I have this, let's have this nice, a totally different color here, big red. Everything below the price that's in that purple box, we subtract. Imagine if you literally cut out the revenue and then you cut out the cost, what would be left? It would be this shape here. Just remember, these shapes are not necessarily triangles. We need to think about what the area is. It's the money you receive in terms of revenue over and above your cost. So think of it as the marginal profit. So we're figuring out, when we try to figure out the producer surplus, how much is the firm being paid and what is the cost? And the cost is given by the marginal cost, the cost of each additional unit, in terms of what it means in our supply and demand framework, in not our perfectly competitive environment, that marginal cost curve, what you need to pay somebody to get them to produce another unit of good, that is going to define the supply curve. And so our producer surplus is, again, and it's an area that's a difference between what would be our total revenue and the sum of our marginal costs. All right. And that's given by the area below the marginal cost curve. And this here's our marginal cost curve, this blue line here. Okay. And so let's actually do another example of that. And I'm going to use, again, we're going back, let's go back to our old spreadsheets here. This is where making going to use a different example. Let me actually go back. Okay, here's our marginal costs, but we're going up here. Well, I think things were in the hundreds. Let me actually go up by single units. So let's go to the new share. And so I'm going to do the supply schedule now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally put the marginal cost, but it's going to be price you need to pay somebody in order to get them to produce a certain quantity of goods. So let's make assumptions about what that looks like. If the price is 1, let's assume that firm will produce 1 unit. If the price goes up to 2, let's assume the firm will produce 2 units. The price goes up to 3 units. So very simple, drawing. Let's actually erase this. Let's use the tools here. Some tools that will give us straight lines here. And let's draw price, quantity. And I'm going to use the same steps. Instead of assuming that is a linear demand curve, I'm going to use steps. So let's first put the numbers for our prices on our number line. And here's my different units. So what's my cost here? My cost, I'm going to use kind of this. My cost for the first unit is 1. For the second unit, you need to be paid. So this is our model. Our model assumes that we need to be paid a particular amount to make that second unit. And we're not assuming that we have divisible units now. You have to make the whole thing or not at all. It's 2. And for the third one, it's 3. So this here, this is my cost. So what's the cost for the first unit? It's 1 times 1. Let's assume that I need to be paid $4 for the next 3 units. So that my total quantity supplied would be 6, but I'm willing to provide that at 4. Okay, so let me make this. What does that say? The cost of each additional unit, 4, 5, 6. For 5th unit and the 6th unit. So what's the cost? The costs are all going to be costs total. I'm going to use the language that we have defined. Total variable cost is the sum of the marginal costs. And so we would be adding up the area of this rectangle will be 1, the area of 2 times 1 would be 2, 3 times 1. And again, it's the additional unit that the cost is represented. 3 times 1 is that rectangle. And so that's 3. And then this would be 4 times 1 unit or 3 units here. We're adding, so to get the total cost of actually producing the 6 units, we're adding up the marginal cost, and that's the area under our supply curve. So let me use, could use red to define our supply curve, and I'll use the very large. So this is our supply curve. It's kind of step here to the 6th unit, and the area below it is the sum of the costs. So what's producer surplus? Producer surplus, say green, producer surplus, again, it's a cost benefit analysis. So what's the benefit to any firm or person who's making a product to sell? It's the price received. That's our benefit. made marginal benefit to firm is the price received, which in competitive markets, it's going to be the marginal revenue, the amount. And I'll just add a caveat here. The marginal revenue is always how much you add to the revenue for selling an additional unit. Again, that word marginal, what do we add when we change one quantity? What's the change in this other quantity? What's the change in revenue when we sell another unit? So the marginal benefit to the firm in the competitive market is the price received, whether it's competitive or non-competitive markets. It's the marginal revenue. So you're adding to revenue and then compare that to your marginal cost. And so let's find our producer surplus is the sum of the excess of marginal revenue over marginal cost. So if we were trying to figure this out over a number of units, what we would do would look at the marginal revenue, in this case, the price, minus the marginal cost for each unit. And we would sum those up and we would get the producer surplus. Now let's actually do that here. Let's use blue. So we're going to look at where's the total revenue, and let's assume that that total revenue is $4. That price is $4. So let me see, blue. So if the price is $4, again, here's our firm demand curve. Firms in competitive industries are price takers. They have to accept the price. They can't affect the price by changing the quantity they produce. Unlike firms in non-competitive markets like monopolies, who can pretty much set their own price and knowing the demand curve and decide how much they want to sell. So this is our P star. So it's the producer surplus. It's the excess of that over and above the cost. So let me put that in green. So I'm looking at what is, this is the amount I have above cost, this little green here. And so this is my producer surplus. What does this look like when we, in our normal assumption about linear demand? Well, let's go back to our usual graph here. And our linear demand and supply. Well, I don't think I need the arrows there. Let's get that. Let's use the one without the arrows. It's my demand. Actually, I want to make a point here. I actually do not need to put the demand curve if I'm trying to find producer surplus. So let me actually do this without. I'll do the market later. Here's the price per unit, and it's dollars. And there's my Q. What's my producer surplus? Well, remember the supply curve, this line here. Again, we're just assuming that for simplicity at the moment that this is the supply curve, it will be coming from the marginal cost curve. And let's actually just note that. So what's the producer surplus? I need to know the price that I receive for the units. And so let's put, again, let's do this in blue. P star. Oops. Undo, let's get our blue line going. And the firm is going to keep producing as long as the marginal cost is below the price. And so the firm is going to produce QF. That's what the firm is going to produce. So what's the producer surplus? And again, let's go back. I want to use the same colors. I'm going to use the red. The area below, Let's rather this pinky one. The area below the supply curve. Again, remember, it's like we're adding up. Trying to use red here. It's like we're adding up the cost. What's the cost of the next unit? What's the cost? And this height represents these costs. And we're literally just adding them up to get the cost. But the producer surplus is not the cost. I think again of the word surplus, it's something that's extra that you're getting. So this is the cost. This is what I have to get paid to cover the cost of producing this, right? So this is, I'm using a symbol for the sum of the marginal cost. Let's see total revenue. Let's get our big blue box going here. Again, you only get revenue for the amount that you sell. So it's very important to identify the correct amount sold. And so the total revenue is the price times the quantity that the firm chooses to produce, and the firm chooses to produce where marginal cost equals price. Just a note that that is equal to the marginal revenue for perfectly competitive firms. So if I were to literally just picture in your head that you had printed this, you cut out the blue box, which is the total revenue, and then you literally cut off the costs, or you cut out the costs. So what's left? And let's try to use our same, let's use that green. So what's the producer surplus? It would be what you would have had left. You literally cut out the total revenue on a piece of paper. And so the green is my producer surplus. Again, what's the total revenue? Subtract out the costs, or literally picture that you printed a piece of paper, or actually do it, print the graph here, and then literally just cut out the part that represents costs and see what's left. Okay. Right, and that's our producer surplus.